Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Sean,
I'm Cohen.
and this week we'll be discussing the recent March Madness, the first weekend of March Madness.
It was a really good weekend, a lot of upsets.
So Cohen, looking at the South bracket, the first quadrant, what stood out to you? Were there any big games?
Definitely the Furman and UVA game.
I agree, especially given UVA's recent history of just collapsing in the tournament, except for 2019.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see a fifth-year senior point guard just not know what to do in that situation.
I think he got scared of the moment. He had already missed a free throw that could have put him up a little bit, so I feel like in that situation he just didn't really want to have the ball in his hands.
And then I also thought the hesitancy of head coach Tony Bennett to not call a timeout was just really poor coaching. You know, there's a guy that everybody heralds as being such a good coach, but the results just have not been there to back it up.
And not enough people are talking about the shot that was hit as time winded down by JP Pegues.
I agree. I mean, you know, everybody's talking about UVA's collapse, which did in fact happen, but Furman played a heck of a game and deserve a lot of credit.
We actually got a chance to watch the Pelotons at Cameron Hall this season.
We did. We watched Furman defeat the VMI Cadets back here in Lexington back in February, and they were dominant. I mean, they've been a dominant force in the Southern Conference all season long.
I agree. What else stood out to you, Sean?
That Princeton Arizona game down there, that 15-2 seed upset was pretty surprising in my opinion.
I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people had Arizona going pretty far. I had them going to the Final Four. How about you?
I had them going pretty far. I feel like in a few brackets I definitely had them going to the Final Four.
And just one thing that surprised me is I have the stats pulled up right here. Princeton shot 4 of 25 on 3. It's not like a case of like UMBC in 2018 against Virginia where you have a team shoot 50% from 3. I mean, they just played their game and they out-rebounded Arizona. Explain to me how an Ivy League team out-rebounds Arizona. How does that happen?
I cannot tell you. There's a famous video where a Baylor guard once talks about how all you have to do is grab the rebound off the rim. So I think that Arizona played down to their opponent and they ended up losing. And that's just what's going to happen. You need to play your game, and they didn't that day, and Princeton did. Just
what's really standing out to me is, you know, Princeton had more blocks, they had more steals. Princeton played a more physical game than Arizona with a bunch of guys who were not recruited by any type of school like Arizona, but they won the turnover battle by having 2 less turnovers. I mean, it's these basic things that win these big games.
I agree. Let's move regions to the East, and maybe the upset of the century. I'd put it up there with the Virginia UMBC, but Furman being taken down by Fairleigh Dickinson. There you go. Purdue getting taken down by Fairleigh Dickinson.
Yeah, you know, the 16 seed taking down the 1 seed for the second time in 5 years. I mean, it's become a more commonplace. Do you have any idea why?
I just don't know. I was not a strong believer in Purdue. I had a feeling that they were going to be an early round exit, but I did not think it was going to be this early. I thought they kind of have a commanding win, in this game, and then just kind of set their fans up for failure. But I mean, they just let them down harsh right away.
I agree. I think that this game really expressed that college basketball is just such a guards game, and big guys are just not in the new style of modern basketball, because you look at Purdue and see Zach Edey, such a dominant force down low, but a freshman backcourt, it rarely wins in March Madness. I mean, you know, looking back, that Duke team back in 2019, you know, Trey Jones, R.J. Barrett, 2 incredibly talented players, couldn't win. I mean, you've got to have that veteran backcourt to go deep in this tournament.
And Edey, a guy who is getting recognition, who's probably going to win National Player of the Year, and now people are saying that he might go undrafted. He's just too old. He doesn't have that skill set for the NBA, in my opinion.
And just another thing about this game, you know, I'm looking at the stats right here, Cohen. This is similar to the Princeton game. FDU, I mean, they shot 30% from 3, 38% from the floor. I mean, they did not play incredible, but they had 11 steals compared to Purdue's 3, and they had 9 turnovers. the whole entire game. I mean, that's phenomenal. That'll put you in a position to win, and they were able to get it done.
Yeah, that was just an awful game by Purdue.
Yeah, I think Matt Painter's job at Purdue needs to be reevaluated.
What's some other games that stood out to you in this side of the bracket?
Well, actually, the matchup that was paired with Purdue and FDU was Memphis and FAU, and that was a super intriguing game because I thought it was two teams that were a little underseeded. I thought they were both a little more along the 7 seed line, not the 8 and 9 as they were. Because I mean, FAU goes 31-3 in the regular season and gets a 9 seed. I don't understand how that happens. And then Memphis the weekend before destroys Houston in the conference title game, who's a 1 seed, and they're an 8 seed. But I would say both these teams underperformed a little bit, and Memphis obviously had a clear talent advantage. I think Memphis is one of the most talented teams in the country, but FAU was able to draw up a final play and get it done at the end to move on, win by 1. That was a real nail-biter.
And Tennessee barely scraping out a win over Louisiana Lafayette. The Raging Cajuns put up a fight.
Shows the quality of basketball down there in the Sun Belt Conference.
I agree.
Alrighty, Cohen. So flipping over to the other side of the bracket right now, into the Midwest, where we had Houston as the 1. I mean, this bracket didn't have as many intriguing matchups in my opinion, but I will say Northern Kentucky played a very good game against Houston. Ended up losing by 11, but they gave them a good fight for a while. Were there any ones that really stood out to you on the side of the bracket?
The Kennesaw State-Xavier game was a great game, a game that Kennesaw State led for most of.
I agree. That was disappointing to see Kennesaw State fall apart at the end.
I thought we were gonna see another upset, but as the game went on, they just kind of started hucking up threes that they didn't need, and it ended up costing them the game.
Yeah, and then Penn State continued their hot streak from the Big Ten tournament. That was definitely one of the better stories of March so far, and they unfortunately were defeated by a very solid Texas team in the second round, but I think things are looking good at Happy Valley. Definitely the best basketball program they've had in a little while.
Absolutely. Another game is I'll move on to the western side of the bracket with start off with UCLA handling UNC Asheville with a dominant win.
Yeah, you see, I thought I saw a lot of people maybe picking UNC Asheville, thinking that could possibly be a trendy upset pick, but UCLA came out ready. They came out a lot more ready than the team that had just defeated them in the Pac-12 title game, Arizona, and they did not fall victim to the 15 seed, unlike Arizona.
I have a lot of hope for UCLA. I think they could go pretty far in this year's tournament. They have a big matchup on Thursday against Gonzaga. That's a big rematch of a few years ago. What round was that?
Let me think. That was the Final Four back.
Was that a Final Four?
2021. Yeah. Phenomenal game. Just an absolutely incredibly high-level basketball game.
Okay. Suggs, who's now an NBA player, had a big three-pointer to win that game for him. But I think UCLA is on that revenge tour, and I feel like they could put up I think it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Drew Timme, it seems like he's never going to leave Gonzaga, but I'm sure he remembers how happy he was when he won that game, and so he's going to want to have that feeling again.
And we'll stay in Virginia here. A VCU falling to a St. Mary's. That's kind of an expected game, but I had the VCU upset. I really wanted to see our boys from Virginia go pretty far in this year's tournament, but
yeah, I mean, definitely a lack of Virginia teams in the tournament this year. We had UVA bow out as first-round exit, but Norfolk State recently has made the tournament as a 16 seed, couldn't get it done this year, and Virginia Tech just with a bit of a miserable year this year. Yeah, we'll see if they can rebound next year, but I'm not too sure.
A first-round loss to the NIT for them was not a good look.
Who did they lose to again?
Cincinnati.
Oh man, was Virginia Tech on their home floor for that one?
They may have been.
Oh wow, that only adds insult to injury.
I agree.
We'll see if they can get better next year. There are a couple of ACC teams this year that just did not have their normal years. It pains me to say it, but the Tar Heels, incredibly rough season.
A team I want to talk about is UConn. A chance to win the men's and women's side of or men and women tournament. The women's are showing dominance, and so are the men's with a big blowout over the St. Mary's team that beat our VCU Rams.
You see, I might have to disagree with you there. I think I'm looking at their Sweet 16 match against Arkansas. I don't think this is a good matchup for UConn. Arkansas is playing confident. They're extremely athletic, and that team has a lot of NBA talent on it. They just underperformed all year, so they're stuck as an 8 seed. But that, in my eyes, that's a team that's playing like a 2 or 3 seed.
That is an 8 seed that took down number 1 Kansas. So.
I mean, looking out of that bracket, so we have Arkansas and UConn, and then Gonzaga and UCLA in the Sweet 16. That's 2 fantastic matchups. People who are watching those are going to get a treat. All right, so then, moving up to the Midwest, their Sweet 16 games, I'm looking at Houston taking on Miami. What do you think about that one?
Both are great teams. Miami has put up some pretty big wins in the tournament so far, especially the number 4 Indiana team. They kind of beat them pretty handily. But I got a loss to Houston. I think Houston's a dominant team. I think that's a team who's probably going to make it to the Final Four, if not the final game, and a very good chance of winning that final game.
I agree. That's a 1 seed that's impressed me. I watched some of their game against Auburn. They were down 10 at halftime, and never lost poise and ended up demolishing Auburn by 17. And Houston's path to playing the Final Four, which coincidentally is in Houston this year, is pretty clear because then I'm looking down at Xavier, Texas. Xavier is a solid team, but nothing that would scare me as a 3 seed. And then Texas has had a good year, but I do not think their backcourt can match up with Marcus Sasser of Houston.
Yeah, I think Texas definitely wins that matchup against Xavier, and I would love to see those 2 Texas teams taking on each other in the Elite Eight.
I agree. The state of Texas might be rioting.
Yeah, this is big for them, and I think that'll be a big rivalry game. I feel like that'll be a packed house, and I feel like but I agree with you. I do feel like Houston would come away with the win in that game, maybe by quite a large margin. I don't feel like a lot of teams are going to stack up with them very well.
Yeah, and then moving over to the South, the Sweet 16 in the South region, I'm looking at Alabama versus San Diego State. What do you think about that?
I don't know if there's much to be said about that game. I have a feeling San Diego State's going to be heading home pretty soon.
I agree. I think Alabama's going to handle that one with little stress, and they'll advance to play the winner of Creighton versus Princeton, which, to be completely honest, I think it was one of the least intriguing Sweet 16 games I've ever seen.
I agree. That's two names you don't really see that far a lot. Creighton has put up some runs in the past, but there's always that one Cinderella story, and I think Princeton stays pretty strong. We kind of glanced over, but Princeton did put up a dominant performance over Missouri. They kind of blew them out of the water. Another game they should not have won, but they just played to their level, played their basketball, and the other team just didn't do what they had to do to execute, and Princeton came away with another win.
Yeah, I really don't know how that Creighton Princeton game is going to go, but to be frankly honest, I don't think it matters. I think Alabama's going to roll right to Houston out of that bracket.
I agree. Moving to the East, we'll see that Florida Atlantic and Tennessee matchup. What are your thoughts on that game?
Well, you see, I was not very confident on Tennessee coming into this tournament. They got handled by Missouri in I think it was the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament, and just a very up and down team all year. But Rick Barnes has seemed to got them humming on all cylinders. They squeezed out one against Louisiana and then put up a defensive clinic against a hot Duke team. And they're going to have to do it again. FAU's got some guards, Deontay Davis, that have shown to have a lot of potential. But I do think Tennessee will win that game. I think it'll be pretty low scoring, but I have Tennessee taking it.
Yeah, that was a Duke team that I thought had a pretty good chance of making a decent run, especially after that ACC championship and everything. They seemed hot coming into this tournament, and I thought they were going to stay hot, but Tennessee put out that flame for sure.
Yeah, and then assuming Tennessee wins, they'll advance to play the winner of Kansas State versus Michigan State for the right to play in the Final Four. How do you see that one shaking out?
I see a hot Michigan State team that's going to lose to a Kansas State team. I think Kansas State is just a better team. Kansas State's put up some big wins this year, and I think that I think it'll be a good game. I don't think it's going to be I think it'll be just a great game to watch.
I agree. The job that Jerome Tang has done out at Kansas State this year has just been remarkable, in my opinion. I mean, can you remember the last time Kansas State was this good?
I cannot.
It may not have been since I was alive.
Yeah, I think that'll be a great game, and I think Kansas State cruises past or wins it.
And then out of that matchup, hypothetical Tennessee versus Kansas State. How do you have that one going for the right to play in the Final Four?
Another great game, but I'm going to take Kansas State again. I think they take down Tennessee. Another great game.
I agree.
If all of our predictions are correct, we'd have Alabama taking on a Kansas State team in the Final Four. Sean, what do you think? What do you think that game would amount to? What do you think would happen?
I think it would amount to some of the lowest ratings of a Final Four game all the time on TV. I would definitely be watching, but that just two football schools that had very good basketball seasons. I think Alabama's media profile has been boosted a little bit by some off-the-court issues, but they've seemed to be able to block those out. And
Absolutely.
I think that the talent of Brandon Miller combined with the experienced backcourt of Javon Quinterly, I have Alabama proving themselves as the number 1 overall seed and moving on to the national championship
I could not
game.
agree more. I feel like that'll be a game that they win and they head to Houston, or they'll already be in Houston. Excuse me, but they'll go to that national championship game. And then we got what's the other side looking like for us?
I think so. Houston and UCLA, if our predictions are correct, which take them with a grain of salt, we're not very smart. But I don't know. That's a phenomenal game.
I think that would be one of the matchups of the tournament. I think that might be more of a national championship than the national championship would actually be. I think those are two teams that should be 1 and 2 if they were on the opposite sides of the bracket. I think Houston comes away with the win in that game though.
I'm gonna have to disagree there. I think UCLA moves on to the national championship game. Jamie Jaquez, such a talented player, and I do feel like Houston's run is going to end in the Final Four similarly to how it did in 2021 against Baylor.
Yep, that's very true. And then we got an Alabama, so going with that, we got Alabama, either Houston or Alabama or UCLA. Either of those matchups, what do you think it would be?
Well, I'm going to go with Alabama UCLA. I think that's what the title game will be. A bit of a non-traditional matchup, especially coming off of last year. You know, when we had North Carolina, Duke, and Kansas, and Villanova on the Final Four. I mean, you can't get much more traditional than that.
Absolutely.
This is much different for better or worse, but Alabama, UCLA, I see Alabama taking it. I don't think anybody's going to stop Alabama.
I agree. I think they're gonna kind of put their name on the map as something other than football this year. I think they're gonna kind of prove themselves. They've always been that football school, but I think this is that year that they bring home a national championship and something else and prove that they're just a dominant sports college in general.
I agree. So that wraps up our March Madness prediction / preview / talk of this year's tournament. It's been a real dandy so far. I've enjoyed it. I think Kellen's enjoyed it
Absolutely.
as well.
It's been a great March.
And I continue to look forward to watching and see how it shakes out. And thank you for tuning into our podcast today.